Hello, hello, welcome back. We are in chapter 4, lesson 4, talking about congruent triangles. So we have a warm-up today. There's 3 questions. So here's my friend, the pause dragon. Remind you to pause your device. Go ahead and work out those problems. When you get done, press play and we'll go over them together. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, let's see how you did. So let's look at the first one. It says, name all the sides and angles of triangle FGH. Now, they don't give us a figure here, but really this label tells us all the information that we need. So I can take this and I can actually draw a triangle, right? Or I can just use the information given here. So triangle FGH means these are the three vertices, F, G, and H, which means all of these vertices are angles. So the angles would be, the first one would be angle F, the second one would be angle G, and the third one would be angle H, my bad. Okay, and then there's the sides. So the first side would just be here, FG. The second side would be FH. Well, I'm sorry, we have FG. The second side would be GH. I would do GH probably for next. And then the third one would be FH. So there's 6 pieces of information on this triangle, 3 angles and 3 sides, okay? This is gonna be very, very important for this section. Now I'm gonna go ahead and draw the picture, and I want you to see just some random triangle, F, G, and H. Okay, we have angle F, angle G, and angle H, right? So those are the 3 angles, exactly what we have just from this symbol here. The first side's FG, right there, FG, and then we have GH, which is right there, GH, and then finally FH, which is FH, right there. So 3 angles, 3 sides. So if you don't have all those written down, go ahead and fill in your note sheet now. If you got the 3 angles and the 3 sides, great job, okay? Let's look at number 2. It says, what is true about angle K and angle L? What do you think? Well, what do we see? We see that there's 1 arc mark for I and N. There's 2 arc marks for J and M. That means that angle I and N are congruent, and angle J and M are congruent. So what do we know about angle K and L? There's nothing there, but what we do know is, I think we learned it last time, was that if you have 2 sets of congruent angles, then the third set of angles must be congruent by the, do you remember? So we know angle K is congruent to angle L by the third angles theorem. So that's the Y. So make sure that you have those 2 pieces of information. Okay, you're also going to be using that a lot in this section. And lastly, what does it mean for 2 segments to be congruent? Well, 2 segments being congruent just means that they are the same size. The 2 segments are the same size. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about properties of congruent polygons, and we're going to use this throughout the section. It's very important. Okay, so what we have here is we have this saying right here. This statement says triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Now, the way that this is written is extremely important. There is a lot of information. There's actually 6 pieces of information from this statement. 6 pieces. What this is telling you is that there's 3 angles that are congruent to each other. Not only are these triangles are congruent, it's telling you that there's 3 sets of angles that are congruent. Whoops, sorry about that. I accidentally hit it. This first letter right here, A, is congruent to the first letter here, D. So if you see A and D, those angles are congruent. Okay? Then it says that angle B the second letter written and the second letter written here, angle B and angle E, those have 2 arc marks, so those are also congruent. And lastly, it tells you that angle C and angle F, I don't even need, so the beauty about this is I don't need any pictures. All I need is this statement, and I know that angle A and angle D are congruent. I know that angle B and angle E, the second letter written, is congruent. And I know that the third letter written is also congruent. Angle C and angle F are congruent as well. So I know that there's 3 sets of angles that are congruent, but look, I said there's 6 pieces of information in this. So it's not just the 3 sets of angles that are congruent, it's also the 3 sets of corresponding sides. So the first set of corresponding sides is found by taking the first 2 letters, AB, that side length. AB is congruent to DE, the first 2 letters here. You see how they have 1 hash mark? Okay, so that means AB is congruent to DE. So this was our first piece of information, second piece of information, third piece of information. This is our fourth, the corresponding sides. If you look here at the second and third letter, BC, that means that side BC is congruent to the second and third letter here, EF. So BC is congruent to EF. And if we look here, yes, BC has 2 hash marks, and EF has 2 hash marks. That means that they're congruent. So that's the 5th piece of congruent information. BC is congruent to EF. And then the last side is the first and the third. AC is congruent to DF. So AC has 3 hash marks. DF has 3 hash marks. That's our 6th piece of information. So just from this one statement, there's 6 pieces of information there, okay? That's a ton of information. So whenever you have 2 congruent triangles like this, you just can't write down these letters in any order. You have to make sure that the way that you're writing it, whatever's congruent to A, you have to write that letter first. So A and D, you got to make sure whatever's congruent to B, you got to make sure you write that second. Whatever's congruent to C is written third, you got to make sure that that is written third here. So it's very, very important that you are pay close attention when you find 2 triangles are congruent, and you write it so that you can have those 6 pieces of information corresponding, 3 sets of corresponding angles and 3 sets of corresponding sides. Okay, so this is a triangle, and then there's quadrilaterals. So here, with this quadrilateral, quad means 4, that means there's 4 sides, okay? We have polygon, PQRS is congruent to polygon, WXYZ. And the same is true as up here, except there's just, you know, 1 more letter, so that means that there's 8 pieces of information here, okay? You have angle P and W, those are congruent, okay? You have angle Q and X are congruent. You have angle R and Y are congruent, and angle S and Z are congruent. So those are 4 corresponding angles, okay? And then you have the corresponding sides. So PQ, WX, so the first and second letter, right? Those are congruent. And you can look on the picture, PQ and WX both have 1 hash mark and they're congruent. So that's that 5th piece of information. And then we can do the next one, the second and third, QR and XY, right? So those are also corresponding segments. So that's that 6th piece of information. And then we can go to the third and fourth, which would be RS and YZ, right? RS and YC. That's the 7th. And then lastly would be the first and the last. So PS and WZ. That's that 8th piece of information for the quadrilateral. All right? So just a helpful hint, consecutive vertices, okay? Consecutive means right next to each other. So those are 2 vertices that are the endpoints of a side. So 2 vertices are the endpoints of the side. So if we looked at this side right here, WZ, the 2 endpoints are W and Z, so that means that they're consecutive vertices, okay? Another one would be right here, WX. So angle W and angle X, those are consecutive. Okay, but WY would not be. There's no segment connecting those, so those would not be consecutive vertices. All right? Another helpful hint, when you write a statement such as triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, you are also stating which parts are congruent, right? And that's 6 pieces of information with a triangle. So you're saying that angle A and D are congruent, angle B and E are congruent, angle C and F are congruent, and also sides. AB, DE are congruent, BC, EF are congruent, and lastly, AC and DF are congruent. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and get started with example 1. Okay, so with example 1 is about naming congruent corresponding parts. So we're given this. Triangle PQR is congruent to triangle STW. I'm sorry. So this means that we have 2 triangles that are congruent. So that means there are 6 pieces of information from this one statement. So what we have to do is we have to list the 3 sets of corresponding angles and also the 3 sets of corresponding sides. So first one, angle P and angle S. That's the first one. The second one would be what? Q and T. Angle Q is congruent to angle T. And then the third would be the one that's listed in third place. So angle R and 1, 2, 3, angle W. Angle R is congruent to angle W. Okay, so we have the angles. Now we need to do the sides. So we're going to do the first 2 here, PQ and ST. This is a line segment, so I'm going to put a line on top. PQ is congruent to ST. Also, QR is congruent to TW. And lastly, PR is congruent to the first and the third, is congruent to the first and the third here, SW. There we have it, our 6 pieces of information. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, now it is time for you. So we have this polygon, LMNP is congruent to polygon EFGH. So I want you to go ahead and pause. Try that one out. When you get done, press play and we'll go over it together. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, let's see how you did. So the angle, since we have this, there's 4 vertices here. That means we're dealing with a quadrilateral. We're dealing with a 4-sided figure, which means there's going to be 8 pieces of information. 4 angles and 4 sets of congruent angles and 4 sets of congruent sides. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first one is going to be the angle listed first. So angle L is congruent to angle E. The next one would be angle M is congruent to angle F. Third would be angle N is congruent to angle G. And last one is angle P is congruent to angle H. Okay, we have our 4 sets of congruent angles. Now we have to go for the sides. So we have LM is congruent to first and second, is going to be the first and second here, so EF. Then we're going to do the second and the third, which would be MN and FG. Line segment MN is congruent to line segment FG. Also, now we're going to do the third and the fourth, which is NP is congruent to GH. So 1, 2, 3. The last one is the first and the fourth. LP is congruent to the first and the fourth here, EH. So if you got all those right, great job. I want to say something that I think I forgot to mention. Going back here, when you have something that's polygon PQRS, you have to do it in the order that it's written. Like you can't jump. You can't go PR, right? There's no segment. So you have to do it with the consecutive vertices. So that's why we talked about consecutive vertices. So the way this is written is in the order of consecutive vertices, the vertices that are right next to each other. So if we start with P, we're going kind of like this way around the quadrilateral. So it's going to be P, Q, R, S. Okay? So P is the same as W, and we're going this way. We're starting here and going this way. So it's W, X, Y, and Z. So you have to go kind of around the figure. You can't go W, Y, Z, X. You can't jump around, okay? So you have to write this using those consecutive vertices, okay? You have to go around. You can't jump over. Got it? All right, perfect. Okay, I will see you in a little bit for example 2.